Penn State wrestling gets nine wrestlers into the Big Ten semifinals. The only one that didn't make it was Braeden Davis. He is knocked down into consolations and has to win a match to advance to NCAAs. We're going to talk about all of it here to recap session one of the Big Ten tournament.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On to Penn State Wrestling. Thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show. Penn State getting 9 wrestlers to the Big Ten semifinals. So we're going to go through the results, analyze the performances. There's only so much to take away, as this was anticipated, aside from Braeden Davis getting knocked down to consolations by a wrestler he did defeat in the regular season. Be a part of the live chat. We are going to go through the comments as well. You are a part of this discussion just as much as I am. But we begin with the positive takeaways from this, and that is Penn State gets 9 wrestlers into the Big Ten semifinals. Also, Penn State was collecting bonus points left and right. So basically almost everybody was collecting bonus points aside from Braeden Davis. Now, he did win his first match. So I don't look at that quarterfinals loss to a Dylan Shaver as necessarily surprising, because it was 2-1 the last time they met. And Shaver's not a bad wrestler. He didn't lose to somebody he wasn't supposed to. But those 9 that did advance: Luke Lillidahl, Bo Bartlett, Shane Van Ness, Tyler Casack, Mitchell Messenbrink, Levi Haynes, Carter Starachi, Josh Barr, and Greg Kirkfleet. I really was confident that they were going to get all 10 into the semifinals. And at the end of the day, they get 9, which is nothing to bat an eye at by any means. So Penn State is up in the team standings as expected. They have 88 points. 88 points, and that is 28 ahead of second place, which is Nebraska. Illinois is in third place with 56.5, and Iowa is in fourth place with 51.5. We're also going to talk about some of the surprises, just overall takeaways from the Big Ten tournament there. But that's an update on the team race as well. I know everybody's been intrigued by that. Just how far is Penn State ahead? How many bonus points have they racked up along the way? So Luke Lillidahl is built for the postseason. He is built for these tournaments because he is so gifted offensively. Now, defensively, we'll see when he goes up against a Matt Ramos, when he goes up against some other wrestlers in the future at NCAAs. We're going to see how he responds. But because of how good he is on offense, he's going to be able to rack up team bonus points. That's something that, Penn State hasn't had at 125 for quite some time, let alone somebody that was really capable. But even Braeden Davis last season is just not as strong on offense as a Luke Lillidahl is. So gets a tech fall again against Kalen Riley of Illinois. Ultimately gets a major decision against Joey Cruz, who has improved. He did tech fall Cruz the first time that they met in the regular season. So those are the 2 wins, and then he's going to meet Matt Ramos in the semifinals. So that's the one that everybody's anticipating. Braeden Davis coming back from this leg injury. Certainly from the looks of it, and we'll talk about the Dylan Shaver match in the upcoming segment a little closer, but just to go through the results. Braeden Davis did win against Andrew Hampton of Michigan State and then ultimately lost. And I think he picked up a major decision there. Yes, he did. He had an 11-2 major decision. So that's a bonus point for Davis, but ultimately lost on a last-second takedown. He was leading 1-0 against Shaver, ended up losing 3-1. Bo Bartlett ends up getting not 2 major decisions against his opponents. He ultimately, he had a bye. He had a bye in the first round and then got a major decision over Grayson Clark of Purdue in the quarterfinals, 13-3. That's a bonus point right there. Shane Van Ness had a bye into the quarterfinals and defeated Cal Miller of Maryland by a major decision as well, 12-2. He is off to the semifinals. Tyler Casack, the only wrestler of really the bunch outside of Braeden Davis that actually didn't pick up any bonus points himself. 7-3. I imagine there's still some rust for Tyler Casack. I don't read too much into that result, but a win's a win in March. A win's a win. and he defeats Trevor Chumley of Northwestern 7-3 was the final. Mitchell Messenbrink didn't wrestle at all. He did not wrestle at all. He had a bye, and probably the quickest win of Mitchell Messenbrink's career. Patty Gallagher of Ohio State actually took a medical forfeit. So that's 2 bonus points for those who don't know. Mitchell getting it because it's essentially the same as a pin, the forfeit. So Messenbrink's not going to, it has not wrestled yet, but will wrestle in the semifinals, picking up the win. Levi Haynes had a bye himself, and then ultimately won against Brody Bowman of Purdue. A lot of Purdue wrestlers that advanced to the quarterfinals. Purdue had a solid showing early in the Big Ten tournament here, and he had an 11-1, he had 11-1 lead, and then he picked up a pin. He pinned Bowman to advance to the semifinals. Carter Starachi, 184. DJ Washington, that's it. A lot of smack talk, right? Kind of like Gabe Arnold and everything. Washington and Starachi haven't had the greatest. There isn't the greatest sportsmanship from Washington there. Made him probably remember that moment. I just think it. I don't think Starachi had anything to prove there. He gets the tech fall in the second period and ultimately advances to the semifinals. Josh Barr dominated his opponent as well. Camden McDaniel of Nebraska winning by tech fall also. And then Greg Kirkfleet gets the pin against Iowa's Ben Keeter at heavyweight, so he also advances to the semifinals. So 15 bonus points between major decisions, tech falls, the 3 pins, and the injury default with Mitchell Messenbrink there. So like I said, team standings, Penn State 88 points, Nebraska 60 in second place, Illinois 56.5, and Iowa 51.5. Those are the top 4. So who is everybody wrestling in the next round? Well, Luke Lillidahl is going to take on Matt Ramos of Purdue. And Caleb Smith will wrestle Dean Peterson on the other side of the bracket. At 133, Davis is down in consolations, and he will wrestle. We'll go through his matchup as well. But for the semifinals at 133, it'll be Lucas Bird against Braxton Brown and Drake Ayala against Dylan Shaver. Braeden Davis would have wrestled Ayala if he happened to beat Shaver. At 141, Bo Bartlett against Vance Vombauer of Minnesota. Got a little bit of a scare there. Vombauer did not have an easy path to get to Bo Bartlett. Brock Hardy will take on Jesse Mendez. That'll be an interesting one. Jesse Mendez, as talented as he is, Brock Hardy is just, if it wasn't for Bartlett and Jesse Mendez, Brock Hardy would be a clear-cut NCAA finalist, or an NCAA favorite, if you will. 149, an upset. I did not expect Dylan D'Amelio to lose, but Cannon Webster is going to move on and face Shane Van Ness. It is not a rematch of D'Amelio of Ohio State and Van Ness. It's going to be Webster of Illinois. Kyle Parko will take on Ridge Levitt. Who saw that one coming? 157, Tommy Askey ends up upsetting Ja'Cory Teamer of Iowa. He will face Brandon Cannon of Ohio State. And that was another one that I had talked about leading up, that, hey, Ethan Miller, vulnerable 1 seed here. I don't know that he advances far. Maybe I don't know if he even necessarily makes it. Now, I thought that he would get to the semifinals, but I don't see him in the championship, right? Well, he doesn't even make it to the semifinals. So it'll be Askey of Minnesota against Brandon Cannon of Ohio State. Antrell Taylor gets a rematch with Penn State's Tyler Kasak. Mitchell Messenbrink, who has only wrestled for 2 seconds today, is going to take on Bo Mantanona, and then Mikey Caliendo will take on Braden Scholes of Illinois. Illinois has had a good showing today. At 174, Levi Haynes gets a rematch against Iowa's Patrick Kennedy. Lenny Pinto will take on Dan Bronigal, and Bronigal had an upset as well over Carson Harchla of Ohio State. 184 semifinals look like this. Carter Starachi will take on Jackson Smith of Maryland, not Gabe Arnold. Not Gabe. All the motivation in the world, and Gabe Arnold disappointed. So maybe he lost intentionally to duck Carter Starachi. No, I promise I am kidding. But that Jackson Smith, Gabe Arnold, those matches go the exact same way. Past sudden victory into tiebreakers both times now. And Jackson Smith gets the best of Arnold. I'm not necessarily surprised. I thought Arnold would finally wrestle Starachi here, but even still. At Edmund Ruth. Edmund Ruth of Illinois. Good to see him because I think he struggled a bit this season. We'll take on Max McAnally. I still expect Starachi versus McAnally in the championship, but Edmund Ruth, hopefully he can prove me wrong because he is I'd like to see that happen because he is the younger brother of Ed Ruth. 197, Zach Bronigal. Zach Bronigal, yes, the brother to Danny Bronigal of Illinois, is going to take on Stephen Buchanan of Iowa in that semifinal. Jacob Cardenas and Josh Barr again. Who else saw this one coming, right? The 2 versus 3 matchup. 2 NCAA title contenders are going to battle it out in the Big Ten semifinals. And then Greg Kirkfleet at heavyweight will take on Josh Heinzelman of Michigan, who defeated Slavakowski of Rutgers, and he got banged up in that match. I thought Slavakowski was going to do it against Heinzelman, and Gable Stevenson's going to wrestle Nick Feldman of Ohio State in the other heavyweight semifinal. So those are all the results in a nutshell. Let's start to analyze some of them. All right, Luke Lillidahl versus Matt Ramos. We got to talk about Braeden Davis because Braeden Davis was the only one that did not advance, and get your comments as well in this live show. That is all on the way next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. And there is no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Using FanDuel's live betting feature is great because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. So whether you're backing your favorite team for a late game rally or you're picking a player to hit a clutch 3, you'll never feel like you missed a chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. That's right, $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And thank you for joining this live show, spending your Saturday afternoon with me here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Let's talk about Braeden Davis. Braeden Davis drops into consolations, and I want to, now this is somewhat confirmed, but he actually has to wait. He's either going to wrestle Wirtanen of Michigan or Norris of Purdue. So the winner of that match will wrestle Braeden Davis, and Davis needs to win that one if Davis wants to clinch a spot at NCAA. So it's not just, okay, well, this is just a matter of pride for Braeden Davis. He just needs to win to build his confidence. No, there is something tangible on the line. He cannot afford to lose in consolations until after the first consolation match that he has to go through. So it's either Norris of Purdue or Wirtanen of Michigan. As for Davis's loss to Dylan Shaver, look, Dylan Shaver is a good wrestler from Rutgers. That is not somebody that Davis is a heavy favorite against. He defeated him the first time around 2-1. It's not like that was a major decision, tech fall, right? Davis still does not look 100% for what it's worth, but it's the passive wrestling. I feel like he somewhat regressed in this matchup. He thought that he was going to get away with being able to just, okay, if I stall, if I win with my defense, I should be able to move on and ultimately face Drake Ayala. Maybe save some moves for that potential semifinals match. And it's just the passivity, but it's also a lack of confidence. The reason he is wrestling, at least from my point of view, the reason he is wrestling passive, it seems, is because, do you notice when Dylan Shaver ultimately got that takedown, it was the one shot attempt that Davis actually tried, where he tried to be the aggressor on offense, and it ultimately turned into 3 points for Shaver. Davis, what I didn't like about the Davis match in particular is that even though as good as he is defensively, Shaver was able to pick him up, not once, but twice. And that's from, everybody talks about heavy hips. You need to have heavy hips. Well, Davis doesn't have that. Davis's core or hip strength is not where it needs to be. So for Shaver to get him in positions like that, where he was vulnerable, because I feel like Shaver should have had more takedowns. Kudos to Davis for being able to fend him off those multiple instances. It wasn't until Davis tried to turn defense into offense where he gave up that where he gave up that takedown in the final seconds. I also don't like the call from the referees. I'm not going to complain about it and say, oh, well, the referees, they made Davis lose. No, if you don't want the referees to intervene, you need to be winning. Do you know how the referees change the outcome? Then don't leave it up to the referees. Don't let their judgment have a say in your match. And that's easier said than done. But if you don't want the referees to intervene with any controversial calls, then make it so it doesn't happen. So Davis is better than Shawver. I truly believe that, but he wrestled a tough match. It's still a tough opponent. He didn't get the best call in the world at the end. I think there's a confidence element. I really do. I don't think Davis is where he needs to be in terms of his physicality and his mentality, but he's got to pick it up going into consolations. He cannot afford to lose that first consolation, because then I don't think he gets into NCAAs. I think it's a judgment call at that point, but it's not a guarantee. He could still get in, but then it's not guaranteed that you automatically get an entry into NCAAs. It goes to the judgment for the tournament. It goes to the criteria. So don't leave it up to that. You won all 10 there. Davis is not 100%. I would not be surprised. It would not surprise me if Davis does go on to win that consolations matchup, because he's better than Mortanen of Michigan. He's better than Norris of Purdue. And then ultimately injury defaults his next consolations match. Just get across the finish line, get your ticket to NCAAs, and then go rest and go from there. All right. So that was a lot from me. Let's bring all of you into the conversation and see what other takeaways we have from here in this early part of the Big Ten tournament. We are Penn State. What's up, Zach? Keep up the great work. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for every one of you that are spending this Saturday afternoon with me. This was the Penn State team I've been waiting to see all season. But they've been there, right? I agree. It's exciting to see nine Penn State wrestlers make it to the semifinals and then pick up bonus points along the way. But this has been happening. 30-8 over Iowa, 31-7 over Nebraska, top 5 teams. They've been doing this all season. Yeah, Braeden Davis, it's heartbreaking, but Davis did not do it. Davis was Dylan Shawver wrestled the better match. There were too many instances where Davis was in a losing negative position. Not once did I say, Davis was so close. Davis just needed that move to go through. Shawver was the aggressor. Shawver, if you watch the entirety of the match, Davis looks like the losing wrestler. Even if he had come out on top, I'd probably win. I'd probably come onto this live show and say, I don't know how much of a chance I give him against Drake Ayala because of the way he wrestled against Shawver. So I did not have a lot of confidence from Davis, win or lose, based on this matchup. I feel like Luke really has a chance against Matt Ramos. He does. Matt Ramos got a scare against Nicolas Rivera, and that was somebody. If you watched any of the preview, because I rattled off a bunch of previews with the seeding, with the pre-seeds, and then ultimately the official brackets. And I said, watch out for Nicolas Rivera, because he mimics. He's not intentionally, but he's a similar wrestler to not a Braeden Davis, a Luke Lillidahl, and Matt Ramos. I don't know if it's a rust. It just sometimes he loses to wrestlers that he really shouldn't. He'll defeat Spencer Lee, but remember last year he got upset by Dean Peterson in the quarterfinals when he was the number 1 seed. So I think Luke Lillidahl, absolutely, it's not just a chance. It's not just a chance. I think this is closer to a coin flip than people are led to believe. Luke Lillidahl is built for the postseason. It's not great, but enough. Are we talking about not all 10 wrestlers making it? And yes, Luke Lillidahl is ready to jump to the next level. I think he's been there. He got caught in a bad position against Brendan McCrone, and it just looked like a conditioning issue against Dean Peterson earlier in the season. Remember, he defeated Caleb Smith, the number 2 seed in this Big Ten bracket at 125. Davis versus Norris from Purdue and Wrestleback. So it is confirmed. It's okay. So Mortanen lost to Norris. So Norris is now going to wrestle against Purdue, from Purdue. So that's who Davis is going to wrestle. All right. Thanks for the update. That's why we have the live chat here. Semifinals are at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and Braeden Davis will wrestle at 6 p.m. Eastern time in that consolations match. So he's going up against Norris of Purdue for anybody just joining the show. Davis needs to get all the way back or his national seed is bad. I'm focused on, I started to think about, okay, what is Davis's path to get to third? He just needs to focus on getting to NCAAs, right? You got to take what's in front of you. Just get across the finish line and go from there. It's not, oh, well, does he get to third? Does he get to that bronze medal match? Even if he takes fourth, I'm not concerned about NCAA seeding. He just needs to get there at this point in time. And I'm not ultimately sure what yes, I understand the difference between, okay, are you the 8th seed versus maybe the 12th seed or the 13th seed? I completely understand that. But if Davis is as good as we would like to think that he is, I still think that he's trying to shake off this injury, shake off some rust, and again, some confidence. Because the match against Ryan Crookham, that is the Braeden Davis that I think that he is. Not the one we just saw against Dylan Shaver. So where was that? Because that's confidence. So why are you overly aggressive against somebody who was the perennial NCAA title contender at 133? He's injured and he's not going to wrestle this postseason, which is a shame. But against Crookham, Davis looked like the best version of himself. And against Shaver, somebody that you defeated, and you're trying to make sure that you just don't make the losing move, and in the process you do. Do you notice how wrestling passively or trying to avoid a loss ultimately gets you a loss? And I think that's what the coaching staff's going to remind him, that if you're going to wrestle like that, if you're going to wrestle to not lose, you're probably going to lose. So the semifinals are at 8 p.m., and that's where a bulk of Penn State's lineup. And we'll be live after that as well. We'll do a live recap there after all of the semifinal matches. Braeden Davis goes around 6 p.m. Eastern time in the consolations. And Gabe Arnold thought he could be Starachi. He avoided him once again. Somehow was able to. It's been 2-3 years of talking a lot of trash just to never wrestle Starachi. Maybe they wrestle in NCAAs. Maybe they do. I don't think that it's likely, but depending on, because Starachi will be the 1 seed. So if Starachi's the 1 seed, then that means that Arnold would maybe he's the 8, maybe he's the 9. I'm not entirely sure how the seeding would go. Depends. Maybe he's the 16 seed, and then ultimately that would, line him up with Starachi again. So it depends where he would be in the bracket. I got to imagine that Gabe Arnold's probably going to be on the other half of the bracket, but I don't think that match holds any value anymore. It's not of any interest to me, because the smack talk, okay, it was fun for the sport. It just made things a little more enticing, but that went all out the door when not even your coaches think that you should be wrestling high profile matchups. They favor the other guy, Angelo Ferrari, over you. So that match was meaningless. That didn't hold any value to me anymore. Starachi versus Arnold. All right, some final takeaways. We're gonna have one more break, get to the comments again, but Ohio State disappointed. Illinois wrestled a fantastic first part of Big Tens. Just some other takeaways about Penn State and overall the Big Ten tournament, and more of your comments are coming up next here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is also brought to you by Nissan. We're all about the stats because numbers do not lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring the off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. That is nissanusa.com. So looking at the standings, like I said, Penn State being number one, that is no surprise at all whatsoever. I think where it is interesting is that Iowa is in fourth place. Now, it's not, they're only down by, 8.5 points here. But Illinois, if I'm looking at winners and losers from the first part of this Big Ten tournament, obviously Penn State, because they're wiping out the competition. They have 88 points. Nebraska has 60. So Nebraska's in this middle where, okay, they're doing well. They're in second place. That's respectable. Illinois is absolutely a winner in here. They're pulling off upset victories left and right. Both Bronagles getting into the semifinals. Eben Ruth. There are a lot of Illinois wrestlers. Braeden Scholes of Illinois to pull off an upset as well at 165. So kudos to, and Cannon Webster. So the Fighting Illini, they showed up. It's not just Lucas Bird and then maybe a couple other wrestlers here and there. No, almost the entire Illinois lineup showed up today at the Big Ten tournament. I'll tell you who did not. Ohio State. I was very high on this Ohio State team because I thought I saw the potential. Brendan McCrone, Nick Bazakis, all of these. Now, don't get me wrong. Nick Feldman's into the semifinals. They still have an anchor in Jesse Mendez, right? Jesse Mendez and Nick Feldman realized there was a Big Ten tournament this weekend. Patty Gallagher ultimately injury defaulted. I wouldn't be surprised if he wrestles back and ultimately takes bronze at 165. But Bazakis loses to a wrestler that he should be beating. Brendan McCrone gets knocked out early. Brandon Cannon actually was the one who ultimately knocked off Ethan Miller. So he's another one. But I look at this Ohio State lineup. Carson Hartschla gets upset at 174. And he was somebody that I thought was going to rematch with Haynes in the championship. What is Ohio State even in? Are they even in Evanston right now? I am very much surprised as far as how they're doing in this. I thought they would be a team that could potentially challenge Iowa for the second place spot. Talked to my counterpart at Locked On Hawkeyes. He said that, hey, Iowa should finish second and Nebraska and Ohio State are of no concern. Well, he was right about Ohio State being of no concern. Now, Iowa is also a loser because they're in fourth place. They should be the second place team. And again, I understand that only 8.5 points separates Nebraska and Iowa, but you're trailing Illinois. You're in fourth place. You should be closer to Penn State than you are further away if you are the Iowa Hawkeyes here. So we'll see how the results continue to unfold here. But those are my winners and losers. Penn State and Illinois. Ohio State and Iowa just absolutely disappointed. And then Ja'Cory Teamer to get knocked out like that, get knocked into consolations. Now, that was surprising as well. I thought we'd see K-Sack versus Teamer in the championships again. So we'll see how many of Penn State's wrestlers actually get to their Big Ten title. Luke Lillidahl is not a distant underdog. He can absolutely defeat Matt Ramos. Everybody else, you can soundly say that they are going to make their respective title. Again, going through these, I like Shane Van Ness against Cannon Webster. I skipped over 141. Bo Bartlett. I like Bo Bartlett against Vance Von Bauer. Now, Von Bauer is so much better than he was a season ago, but the last time these two met, Bartlett ultimately pinned Von Bauer at NCAAs. But again, different wrestlers. So this one will be closer. Von Bauer will give Bartlett a fight. Don't you worry. Van Ness over Webster. K-Sack should be able to defeat Antrell Taylor again, but that will be an exciting matchup. Mitchell Messenbrink, we know that he's going to win. It doesn't matter who he's wrestling. Just expect either a very high-scoring major decision or a tech fall there. Levi Haynes won convincingly against Patrick Kennedy the last time that they met, so nothing really should change there. Carter Starachi against Jackson Smith will be intriguing, but Carter Starachi is so much better than the rest of the competition. That's where I want to see if Max McAnally is close as a true freshman in that Big Ten title. Josh Barr and Jacob Cardenas. That's one that, yes, this is a true coin flip. So other than Luke Lillidahl and Josh Barr, you can all but guarantee everybody else into their respective Big Ten titles. And that was the line, right? 7.5, right? Of how many wrestlers we're going to get to their respective Big Ten championships. I'm eager to see how Barr does against Cardenas again, now that Cardenas has had time to process that match the first time around. If it doesn't get to tiebreaker, Barr has the best stamina, I think, of anybody. I think he has the best overall conditioning of anybody in this 197-pound weight class, but it's the technique. He's a first, and I'm not trying to criticize Barr, but does he have enough in terms of his overall arsenal when it is in regulation to defeat Cardenas again and then go up against Buchanan potentially again? So Josh Barr, he can prove a lot here in these next two matches, because if he wins, if he ends up being the Big Ten champion, it will be hard to pick against Barr at NCAAs. And we'll go back to the comments briefly before we wrap this one up. Again, I will be live after session 2 as well to recap the semifinals and preview those championships. Let's see here. I feel bad for Mitchell. He loves wrestling so much and has been dealt with so many forfeits in his career already. I mean, I hope Patty Gallagher's okay. He's been battling injuries throughout this season. There was the chatter. I saw the chatter that Gallagher kind of cut his losses, and instead of maybe aggravating anything, they basically accepted that he was going to lose. So focus your energy on wrestling back through consolations rather than going up and against an opponent that you know you're going to lose to. Let's see how Tyler looks tonight. I have Tyler Cael looks like the favorite to me at NCAAs. He looks like the #1 overall wrestler. And what's different between himself and Braeden Davis is concussion protocol doesn't really change. It doesn't change your conditioning. It doesn't change your wrestling style. Now, I'm not trying to discredit or minimize dealing with concussions. However, right, Davis has to adjust his game and his style and be tentative with that leg injury. Whereas Cael, you're not, you just have to make sure that you don't, re-aggravate the concussion. So you have to wrestle more soundly, but, if I step the wrong way, or if I happen to get turned to my side, am I going to re-aggravate that muscle or that tendon? Cael isn't dealing with any of that. So concussions are, yes, very serious, but it doesn't change your style of wrestling or competition. I hope that makes sense to makes sense to everybody. Everybody should be pumped for tonight. Right? It's a busy night for Penn State wrestling. You still have all 10 alive, and 9 of them are going to be in the semifinals. And if Braeden Davis wrestles and wins, he'll keep going. I'm sorry, Zach, but Braeden Davis really has spit the bit with any offense. He's not an offensively sound wrestler. He's a defensive wrestler. He's not going to pick up a lot of bonus points. He's going to try to win close matches. And we saw he fended off multiple takedowns from Shaver. I think that Davis is better than what we're giving him credit for. I think the injury really has something to do with it. I do. But it's that back and forth. He was in and out of the lineup. He was wrestling, and then he wasn't, and then he was, and then he wasn't. So he really never gained a lot of traction at the end of the day. Keep up the great work, Zach. I always seek out and enjoy your analysis. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for checking out the show, each and every one of you. And everybody else could be doing something on a Saturday afternoon, and I'm grateful that all of you are here. Talk about lacrosse. Yes, talk about men's hockey. Shout out to Penn State men's lacrosse for anybody that missed it. Had a late comeback against Cornell with 2 minutes to go? 2 minutes to go in that one. And yes, they won a huge game. And it was the comeback of it as well. They weren't leading. They had to come from behind and win. Penn State men's hockey all but booked its spot in NCAAs, and they might knock out Michigan in the process. So busy night for Penn State athletics overall. You have Penn State wrestling. You have Penn State men's hockey in the Big Ten quarterfinals. They could sweep Michigan, knock out the Wolverines of the NCAA tournament, and then clinch their spot in the process. And Penn State men's hockey is peaking. They are red hot. But we're talking about wrestling here. Illinois. I'm really impressed with Illinois. Penn State wasn't at full strength and still won 29-9 against that Illinois team. That shows how dominant Penn State is. That just shows how talented the Nittany Lions are and how much further ahead they are in the competition, because they win by that margin against a team that's doing extremely well at Big Tens. And hopefully they can use that as momentum going into NCAAs. I like this Illinois team. They just hadn't shown a lot in the season, but this is what the postseason is for, right? And I think that's where we're going to wrap it up here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. So again, friendly reminder, we will be live again after the Big Ten semifinals tonight, relatively immediately after the fact. So give or take, 10, 15 minutes after the conclusion of everything, to recap the semifinals and preview, hopefully, a bunch of Penn State title matchups for tomorrow. And then I'll be live tomorrow as well after those Big Ten championships go final. We'll recap it all, we'll analyze it all, and look ahead to NCAAs as well. Thank you so much. So stay tuned. If you're not already, become an everyday or subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to keep up with these conversations and to be here in real time when we do go live so you don't miss anything. Thank you so much for checking out this show. Appreciate each and every one of you, especially if you contributed in the live chat. Thank you for being a part of the conversation. Please leave a like on this episode, share it with friends and family. And for more conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams, whether it's Penn State wrestling, Penn State football, Penn State men's basketball, Penn State men's hockey too, and others, keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.